the installers and the specifiers, the people behind our homes, creating plans, foundations, frames and walls to build homes filled with love, laughter, tears and joy. You're architects of innovation, designers of comfort, builders of dreams and installers of perfection. With skill and determination, you're building a better New Zealand, and we're here to support you every step of the way. Jim, let's build.
E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e Ngāti whātua, nā kaitiaki o tēnei rohe, ka nui te mihi, ka mihi hoki kia waipapa taumatarau, e whakakotahi mai nei I a tātou, I a rārau, e te mare o te toi me te whakaaro nui. He mihi nui, hoki kia Winstanley wallboards jib, mō tō rātou tautoko I tēnei kaupapa. Sorry, just dropping. So acknowledgements first of all to Ngāti whātua, the mana whenua of this land which was gifted the land for the university to build pretty much what we see around us today, and for bringing us together in recognising this kaupapa of Indigenous knowledge as an active force that can reshape colonial structures rather than merely resisting them. We give, so we thank Jib and for their unswerving support for the Fast Forward lecture series. He mihi nui hoki kia te kāhui whaihanga, Tamaki Makaurau me Titai Tokoro. That's the New Zealand Institute Auckland branch. For their generous support. Kia ora, Tim.
That wasn't the person I was going to make you go, oh, to the late one. Someone else is coming. Are you right down the front there, my friend?
Yeah. Do you want some water?
You might get a better view from up the back.
Right, so some of you will know the story behind the kupu, transcolonisation. My article for Architecture New Zealand traced 30 years of the slow road of te ao Māori architecture and the quest for an emergent architecture on these shores to reconcile colonial traditions and European influences with a sustained interest in the Indigenous project. It's quite timely because on Monday of this week, AGM, the publishers of Architecture New Zealand, announced that the magazine would close. What is of concern here is that our local architecture doesn't retreat back to home, to designer houses, and a world of 300 square metre bloated batches, multiple en-suites, triple kitchen islands, and lap pools. Māori architecture is innately social through whakapapa and is intrinsically tied to the environment through whenua. And the image I took probably about an hour before we came in here is a Google search of the term Architecture New Zealand, and you can see the landscape of architecture here is still dominated and coagulates around the house. So let's hope the future is about housing and other forms of public and social architecture currently amiss. So very timely, Tim, that you could be here because transcolonisation, the article turned into this Archi lecture series. We had 5 speakers back in 2021, and the first of them was, who's kindly gracious us this evening, was the country's only independent gallerist, and Nigel Borrell. So back in 2021, our second speaker was Jacinta Aruru, our first Māori law professor, and she spoke as a global innovation, how Māori values of tai ao and kaitiaki gave rise to legal personhood and first afforded te Urawera forest and the Whanganui River. So back then, the third and only talk, which was to be live, when these were COVID times, featured Witi Ihi Maira, who just published Navigating the Stars. And I'm glad to report that the person circled in red is also with us this evening. Kia ora, Dad.
Ah, kia ora.
Who's come up to mihi in Tautoko Chelsea as we all whakapapa to Rangi marae of Ngāti Ranginui down in Tauranga Moana. My father's also got some other reasons for being here, hidden agendas. Anybody in earshot at the drinks and manaki afterwards would undoubtedly fall within his spell of his magnum opus, this 371-page hand-drawn, non-blind, non-peer-reviewed of Mātauranga from Mōtiti Island. He's also got his new book out here tonight. It's a draft synopsis, I believe, is that right? Yeah. I asked him why it was on a passport. He said it's because he flew 15 times to the UK. Is that correct? So, that's enough pātai. You can direct them to my father afterwards. The fourth speaker back then was Paul Majuri of the Tipuna Maunga Authority. And every time I keep scanning, is Michael Thompson here? Because he could regale us with motorcycling stories around the crater, but he's not, so we won't. So, e tēnei pō, e rangatira, e Chelsea. No mai, haere mai, ki wai nā nui I a mātou. Wahine toa, Chelsea, welcome back to Waipapa Taumatarau. Nā mihi hoki, e te wahine toa, e taku whanaunanga, me tauranga moana powerhouse, mō tō koutou tautoko e tēnei rā kōrero, me te tautoko e era atu kai kōrero katoa. So thank you, Kaz.
Yeah, kia ora, Kaz.
For your support, not just for the lecture series, but also for gluing me to Tim and to Nigel, to Mr. G, Tyrone, and for generally really advocating this space. Kia tūmanako, tātou ma a tātou, mahi, nā tahi a mua aki nei e whakakaha, ia e whakahau, hoki te marae, I te ao kiriata, I te ao hoahoanga. So let's hope our next collaborations lead to marae transformations, cinematically and architecturally. So no mai, haere mai, and let's give it up for Chelsea Winstanley.
Okay, I need you to indulge me for a minute. I'd like you to all kapi o whatu. Close your eyes. Huakina o koutou whatu, open your eyes. A tēnei te mihi kia koutou, nau mai hara mai ki tēnei pō, ki tēnei kōrero. A ko te me tuatahi e mihi atu ki ngā haukainga o ēnei takiwā, nā te pātua rākei. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou I o koutou manaki, I o mātou. Nā hunga mate, ka mihi nui kia koutou, haere atu rā, hoki atu ki te wairua o tātou tipuna. He mihi atu, he wahine toa, he wahine kaha a Sharon Hawke. Tēnā koe. Ka huri au kei te mihi ki ngā hunga ora, e rauranga tira mā, e te whanaunga, kai mahi a Waipapa Taumatarau, a Auckland Uni, nā tauira, nā hoa mā, e te whanaunga, kei a koe Anthony. Yeah. Nau mai, hara mai, piki mai rā. Ko wai au, no Tauranga Moana hau, Nai te rangi me nā te ranginui ōku iwi. Ai tupu ake au ki Tauranga Moana, engari I nai anei e noho anau ki Tamaki Makaurau. Ko Chelsea Winstanley aho, he repeat offender aho. Yes, it is me. This is my second time, because when the kazi calls, you answer. And I think that's kind of just what we do as Māori, you know, you got to support one another, so it's a real pleasure to be here with you tonight. Last time we weren't actually in this space. I think we were in the COVID ones, weren't we? We were at lockdown, it was a screen, it was a computer maybe. No, we didn't even have, Dad wasn't even in our midst. It was just me and you. And the gallery, yeah. It wasn't as fancy anyway. Well, it's not like this. And I don't do lectures, so I'm just gonna wing this. Thank you for being patient with me, but here goes. I had this guy helping me at like 11th hour trying to put this together. But who am I in relation to this? Because this is my kaupapa tonight, visual sovereignty and soul collisions. So I guess it's all about what drives me and really what is a soul collision? But more importantly, Anthony, what the hell is a trans-colonized city? This dude, like, you know what I did? I even read, where's that book? He wrote something in this book and he sends it to me as a present. And I'm like, oh my God, is this what I've got to talk about? But actually, it's quite fascinating. I'll talk about that later. But I'm going to break my kōrero up into two parts. And the first is around what I've created before around 2020 in terms of my visual sovereignty. And the second part is what I've done since then. And I suppose it's all towards my driving kaupapa, which is visual sovereignty. And I just wanted to talk about that karanga that I played earlier on, because for me, in terms of soul collisions, that karanga is kind of like a first soul collision for me. And when we think about what a karanga does, it really actually opens up the space. And it's the first sound you will ever hear on a marae. And I know sometimes people go, why aren't wahine allowed to speak on the marae? All the dudes are up there. But in actual fact, when you first walk into that space, it is a wahine Māori that you will hear. And the purpose of that is to really open up and create a very tapu, sacred space. And I think for me, wahine Māori have been so important to me. Their soul collisions in my life have really framed who I am and the type of storyteller that I've become. So I just wanted to put it out there. He wahine toa, he wahine miharo. The first call you ever hear is women, and to me, that's really important to my journey. But let's start with, I suppose, pre-2020, so that you get an idea of perhaps who I am. I guess that's just a snapshot of what I've been kind of up to and creating in the former part of my career. And many things have contributed to the storyteller that I've become, but ultimately, I knew I wanted to tell stories that in some way contributed to a better future. For me, for my whānau, and for te iwi Māori, and for this country on the whole. And that's what I've been trying to do in my career, in various ways, for the past few decades. And I'm excited for you all, because you are now entering the world of brown brilliance. I mean, look at this. Te Matatini. Over 20 million views online globally, celebrating our language and our culture. The Hikoi, over 80,000 people gathered in Whanganui Atara to protest against the ACT Party's proposed Treaty Principles Bill, Q. Hana Rafiti Maipi Clark, the youngest MP in the House, tore that bill to shreds. Oh look, there was another ex-MP, kia ora kiri tapu. Perfect timing. She shredded that bill to shreds in Parliament and won an international award in 2024 for Politician of the Year. Stan Walker, he's pretty cool. Mr. G, he's super cool. He gave a lecture here. Ria, she's cool. And oh, look, Kiritapu Allen, legend. And gee, how funny, they just all whakapapa te tauranga moana. I mean, how cool is that? But you know what's not cool? This guy ain't cool. And neither is that guy. And definitely not this. The Māorification of everything. I mean, what even the hell is the Māorification? So we seem to be globally hot, but domestically not. And so it's okay for the Prime Minister who wants to trot around the globe with the kapahaka crew by his side, while the Minister of Education is removing words like marae from early reader books, where kids are going to a marae. What other kupu is there to describe that place? And funding for our agencies tasked with supporting Te Reo Māori and broadcasting like Te Māngai Pāho have just had $16 million taken away from their budget. So it just doesn't make sense. Especially when, oh hello, 8 out of 10 of the highest grossing films of all time in Aotearoa are either written by, directed by, or derived from brown breeds. But we have to take a deep breath and just remember that this too shall pass. It's also the name of my company. But, you know, sovereignty. So for me, sovereignty stems from a political concept. And it also it refers to a dominant power or supreme authority. And I suppose visual is a vehicle in which I choose to create. So I'm a storyteller, filmmaker, and in the case of visual sovereignty, I am the authority over my story. And everything, in my mind anyway, is political. For me, creativity comes from two places, passion and purpose. And when I think about passion, if it doesn't move you, it probably won't move anybody else either. And so it makes sense to kind of be in love with what you do and who you do it with. Not romantically, well maybe sometimes you can be, but you've got to do your DD, do your due diligence on who you go to business with. And I might touch on that a little bit later, but for me, creativity is art. And I believe art truly saves lives. In terms of the purpose, do the why that makes you cry. I don't necessarily mean the ugly, like, you know, on your knees kind of crying tears, because tears can be joyous, they can be triumphant, and they're often born out of bravery or hardship and adversity, and they can be courageous. And you know those experiences in life where they kind of move you to tears? Those are the tears that I'm talking about. And that's where I think true creativity comes from, because they're connecting us with humans. And they're connecting us with one another, and that's what empathy is all about. And cinema has the opportunity to do that. And it touches you, you know, on a deeper level, on a cellular level, some would say even a soul level. And remember what I said about soul collisions before? Well, I've had a few soul collisions that have helped me on my creativity. I had a soul collision with this dude. We produced some stuff, some movies, a couple of kids. I also had a spectacular bloody ending to that collision. However, overall it was a really fantastic creative collision, and I'll forever be grateful for that, because while working on that feature boy, that our first project together, I had another collision and was asked by this incredible filmmaker here on the right, Mera Timita. She asked me if I would produce a film with her, and my God, she had been an idol of mine for years. And so when I remember seeing the first documentary, actually when I was at university, and the first one that really put that seed and planted itself, I guess, in my belly of fire, and it was Bastion Point Day 507. So up here on Takaparafo, the occupation. And I just remember watching that film, and you know that scene, hopefully so many of you have seen it, I see lots of nodding heads. That scene where you see the tanks rolling up and you see the police arriving and you see the beautiful kaumātua and kuia, and they're just holding on to their po. They're holding on for dear life to that whenua, their whenua, and they're just being dragged off peacefully. And it broke my heart, man. And to see that image and then to know that that was created and made by a wahine Māori, I thought, I want to do something like that. So, the other thing, the do the why that makes you cry, would be our shared grandmother, Kiritapu, your namesake, Kiritapu Burrell. So for me, she's a beautiful descendant from Tauranga Moana, as everyone else on this lecture series. But she was of the generation that was beaten for speaking her language, which just seems ludicrous to us today, doesn't it? That a kid would go to school and be hit for saying kia ora. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. But, you know, when I heard that, and you've got kind of these two things swirling around inside you, you know, and it really made me think about the reason why I didn't have the language. So I didn't grow up with it, because if my grandmother was beaten at school for it, she's not going to teach her daughter, which was my mum, and subsequently she didn't teach me. So I never had the language. And the loss of land, you know, is, well, at that time it was close to extinction. And in order to keep it alive, our elders started kohanga reo, literally in their kitchens. So again, beautiful wahine Māori, always at the forefront of change. But it was them who really were on a mission to ensure the survival of our language. And if we think about it, Te Reo Māori was only an official language in the 80s, which is really only 50 years ago. So based on those two things, Merita and my nan, I really thought about the loss of language. And the other thing that really got me as I was learning and going to university was also the loss of land. I hope this will work. And I want to talk over this, and I'm playing it. As you watch this, you can understand that the loss of land directly relates to having, you know, economic power and choice. And when you have those two elements taken away from you within your own country, you kind of become a prisoner of imposed colonial systems. And you're having to play this game of a monopoly, and whereby you are not getting the same economic dividends. There's no 200 for pass and go, and in fact you are more than likely to go straight to jail. Because over 60% of the female prisoners currently in custody, female prisoners, are Māori. That is an imposed colonial criminal system that is working perfectly. So it's actually no surprise to me then that after Lords entrenching the theft of land, removing language and cultural practices, that Māori find themselves at the mercy of and occupying the shittiest stats. Poor health and high incarceration. That's not brown brilliance. The mere fact that I'm here and all of the speakers on this series have been Māori is actually brown resilience. So to me, Te Reo Māori is the language of the land. It's the only unique expression of its kind that exists in this country. And it doesn't come from any other place. It is literally born on this whenua. And it's a taonga that we can all, actually everyone that lives here, we can all appreciate. And we all also have the power to stand up collectively and oppose these imposed colonial and racist systems, because they don't actually do anyone any good. So before the loss of language, you know, was the land, and an enormous amount was confiscated and stolen. And removing the economic base of power and freedom for Māori. But you know what? There's kind of an irony in all of that, because sometimes the most amazing things can happen when you have nothing. And so Māori talk about te kore, te pō, and te ao marama. That's the nothingness, the long night, and the world, and moving into the world of light, te ao marama. And often in that nothingness, there is potential. And so in that place of darkness, of freedom, and all you've got is your dreams and your imagination. So for me, I turn to my imagination of storytelling. And I suppose here's part 2 of my creative soul collisions. So that's what I've been up to for the last 6 years. But if I go back to this, so back to imagination and dreams. For us at Matua Media, the dream was really, really simple. All we wanted was for our babies to be able to walk into a cinema just like any other kid in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and be able to watch a film in their own language. But in order to do that, of course, we had to prove to exhibitors that we had a Te Reo Māori speaking audience willing to go. Because all we ever heard was, oh, there's no audience for that. Well, it's a pretty lazy and ill-informed answer as far as I'm concerned. Because, you know, it's not really until you either prove economically, the cinemas and the distributors, that they can make money from you, that they start to notice. And that's purely the language of capitalism. So how do you become the audience that make it undeniably clear that we are here and cannot be ignored? Well, you knock on the door and partner with the biggest global giant entertainment company in the world. So one who already has a loyal audience and just happened to make the box office hit Moana. And to us, it seemed perfect. It was an empowering story about a young girl from the Pacific, and it also had, let's face it, some pretty kick-ass brown brilliance. It had Rachel House, who played Grandma Tala. It had Jermaine Clement, who played the crazy crab. It had Temuera Morrison, who was the chief, and we also enlisted our beautiful Pacific brother, Oscar Kitely. He was also in the film. And so what we were doing, we're being quite strategic. When we approached Disney, we said, well, you already know the caliber of your actors. And they were like, oh yeah, I suppose that's true. And they said, okay, they can all speak Maori. And we were like, they couldn't. But we were like, yeah, of course. And they were like, oh, okay, so you've done, you know, you're familiar with animation, you've done it before? No, of course not. Yeah, of course. Okay, and you know, you've got the budget to make it happen? No. We had no money, no background in animation, but we knew we had an intention and we had a dream. And I really believe that if you've got something that pure, the universe transpires and something magical happen. And you know, as far as I'm concerned, it happened, because between 2022 and 2024, you know, we look at that now and we made a further 4 films. We also, the thing that's kind of trippy about this relationship with Disney is that we could never share in the back end. And for a lot of people, they'll be like, what the hell? Why did you even bother doing that? Well, for us, and the back end simply means to be able to share in the profits. When you go to the movies and you pay your ticket and all the things like that. But for us, it wasn't about making profit. It was about making intergenerational, transmissional change in language acquisition. And that's exactly what we tried to do with this. So the other thing that we tried to do with this project is build capacity. Because when you think about it and you think about Disney films, they give you the opportunity to upskill in writing, directing, performing. We were able to employ so many young kids in the kapahaka space that were just guns at the singing, because obviously with Disney films, you not only have the dialogue to transcribe and translate, or reimagine is what we call them, but you also have the opportunity to do all the songs. So we knew this was then going to be a living product forever, because you can find all of the albums on Spotify or Apple Music now. So, you know, you might go to a movie theater and then there's the film, it's gone. But now you can also, you know, you can play this in the car on the way to school. All these things that allowed our language just to keep going, to keep being alive. But the other thing that we really did with these films is be quite intentional. We knew that The Lion King was an opportunity to actually celebrate a whole lot of different dialects. So if you think about it, in The Lion King, you know, got all those crazy animals as characters. So for us, it was like amazing. We could actually celebrate under the radar a bunch of different dialects, different mita in our country. Now, this has never been seen before or heard. The opportunity for a lot of different iwi to participate in one single film. So obviously, we had to give, you know, Lion King, Mufasa, and everyone from the Kingi-tongue, we had to give them Tainui dialect. You know, I mean, gosh, we could have not. We gave the crazy baboon Rafiki, the Tuhoi. They're a bit crazy, you know, magical. We gave Timon and Pumbaa up north. And we gave the hyenas to Tairāwhiti. I don't know why we were mean to the coasties, but anyway, they were great. Frozen, it was really intentional that we celebrated the mita of Kaitahu, because that, you know, our poor cousins don't often get resources in their language. And of course, we're not going to ask our cousins on the coast of Tairāwhiti to, you know, to translate that one. They don't have the words for hokapapa, for snow. So it made sense, we'd go down there. Kokoreo Māori was just a beautiful opportunity to celebrate family and whānau and really bring in that concept. And also really think about and talk about, you know, our relationship to those that have passed on. For Māori, it's kind of normal to have kehua, if you like just living and breathing in our everyday lives. And then in Kanto, well, that was just out the box crazy. because that just allowed us to allow our kids, these kapahaka, like wizards, because if you've ever seen that film, the reo is so tere, it is so fast, it's super hard to understand. I know, Kiritapu, your daughter probably, easy as mum. Yeah, and mine to some extent too, but for me, I'm just like, poof, that was really wonderful. But one film that I really wanted to touch on is probably The Lion King. And it's a great little case study to look at what we did with that film. We played across 86 sites in 24 locations. That is massive for a re-release. That is what just a normal film gets in this country. We played right through into school holidays. It was loved that much. The opening weekend took over $220,000. That again matches some of the top New Zealand films. It was huge uptakes in school and group bookings. And then, it's so funny because we were creating content for cinemas that get no day trade. No day trade like this. We were basically in droves, in buses, like feeding the cinemas. You can imagine it now. They're all like, when's the next one coming? But something we did, which I think is really fantastic with this particular film, is we did something really cool with Sir Elton John. So originally we were told that no one had ever reversioned the final end credit, that knockout ballad as the credits are rolling. Can you feel the love tonight? Oh, thanks. No one has ever done that because he has OV on every single language, original voice. So that would be French, German, Spanish, Japanese, whatever it is. So no one had ever done that. And we didn't realize at the time, so we're getting all the stems as you do for the music and for the dialogue, and we get to the end, we're like, oh, they've forgotten to send us this one file. So excuse us, hey, it's just a little crazy Maori's down here, we're waiting for one stem, you haven't sent it to us. They're like, oh no, you can't have that. We're like, what? And then they explained to us he has OV on every single voice. And we almost had a heart attack. We're sitting there thinking, oh my God, we just released Moana, the kids are just like, whoa, this is epic, we have our first film back to back all in Te Reo Māori. We were thinking, we cannot let them sit through this film, beginning right through this film of Te Reo Māori brilliance, and then have Sir Elton John bout out, can you feel? No shade on Sir Elton, he is amazing, but we couldn't do that to our babies. That would just be sacrilege. So we were like, oh my God, we have to find a way to get to Sir Elton. We just can't disappoint our babies. So we decided to do anything and everything in our power to get to Sir Elton. And this is what we did. So we had secretly recorded Stan Walker doing that. Disney had no idea what we were up to, but we knew we just had to try and get to him some way, somehow. We were just pulling any levers we possibly had. And then with all of these films, we either have to go to London or to Los Angeles to do the final mix. They like to have their little, mitts on it. We do all the recording and everything and all the baseline mixes, and then have to go up there. So 2 days out from being on the lot in Los Angeles, we get the call and Sir Elton gave us the thumbs up. So, it's really funny that he can understand the importance of what we were doing and the importance of the revitalisation and the fact that, he could feel the love tonight. Surely as a nation, we also can too. But the coolest thing is that Te Reo Māori is the first ever language in the world to ever reversion Can You Feel the Love Tonight, and therefore the first foreign language ever to do back-to-back Lion King, full stop, in any other language. That, I think, is something we all should be so, so proud of. But by September 2024, we had gone on to make 5 Disney films by that stage, all in our language. And our babies could go to the cinema and see them just like any other kid. But what could possibly beat that? Given that, those films that we were making were films of the past. So then we had this really cool opportunity. We had the opportunity to do moana tu reo Māori, day and date. Now what that means, day and date, is that you can literally go to the cinema at the same time. This has never been done before. And see a film in English and in another language. Now around the world, that's kind of normal, but here it's never been done before. So when we were given this opportunity, we were also finishing in Kanto Reo Māori, and it was like, oh my God, how are we going to do that? But we knew deep down inside, if we didn't, we actually would be doing a disservice to our babies. So we were just like, right, pull on the bootstraps, let's get into it. Like, doing something day and date is crazy. At the same time, any other language is being given the material. We were seeing stick figures. The animation hadn't even been done. So our team were having to try and imagine what the mouth movements were going to be like. This work is so incredibly hard. So, all credit to our team, because it absolutely blew our minds. And of course, that premiere was amazing. We were at the big Westfield Centre in Newmarket, and we had cinemas playing English and Te Reo Māori. And most of the people actually wanted to go the Te Reo Māori version. The Pākehā version was quite empty, which says a lot. But, our dream was fulfilled. It truly was. And by then, for us, I think we had done our babies proud. So now, I suppose, we have our own collection on Disney Plus. Reo Māori, there are 6 films on there that you can see. And all I can say to that, I suppose, is like, don't ever give up on your dreams, because they are important and they really do have the ability to change lives. When families are reaching out to us saying, I've never been able to take my son to the theatre before, to a cinema, because he suffers from severe autism. But when you started making these films, and one in particular that they remember is that they started playing them at home for him. And they just noticed that his whole ahua, his whole demeanour, everything was tau. And they'd never really seen him be that way before. And so they were like, wow, maybe we could give it a go. Let's see. His kohanga reo was going to go and to watch Koko Reo Māori. So they thought, well, let's try. So they took their son to Koko Reo Māori, and for the first time in their lives, they could go to the cinema as a family and watch a film, because their son was tau. And what does that say? It just means kids just want to hear their own reo, feel safe in their own language and culture. So when you have things like that, and we know we don't make money off the box office, but that's not our driving force. That's not why we do this, because for us, it's about transformational change. And yeah, that's why we do these things. And as I said, I truly believe art saves lives. So, what I am grateful for, the learnings and the soul collisions of being a producer, and I have learned, and I've done many projects as a producer, but it really wasn't my first passion. And in fact, the first short film that I ever made, which was for my university graduating film, I won a Media Peace Award for that. I don't even think those Media Peace Awards exist anymore. And God, I feel like, God, we need them probably more than ever right now, don't we? But it actually helped me get my first job too. And that little film was, I just made that film about my whānau and all my cousins that were basically keeping the Māori of our tikanga alive and our kawa alive on our marae by creating like a little tourist business while they were also full-time studying at Waikato University. And we'd have either these ships come in from, these international ships, or these other school groups would come, and I would just watch them put their heart and soul into this work, and all I wanted to do was just capture that. And I'm so grateful they let me, because it won that Media Peace Award, but it also got me my first job at Kiwa Productions. And so I was very lucky to walk into my first working environment with wahine Māori. So Kiwa Productions was run by Rhonda Kites and Libby Hakaraia. And it was a really great place to kind of form my early career, because that was when Māori television was kicking off and everyone was just making all sorts of content. So I was directing like a little art show, cruising around the country, interviewing amazing Māori artists. I made Tamaiti, that little documentary there. And so I knew for me that that directing was actually where I wanted to be. But life happens, soul collisions happens, as I mentioned before, that crazy dude, the vampire guy, all these things, you know, they take you in life, life takes you on twists and turns. And so when I found myself thinking, I'm at a crossroads in my life now, and after Jojo Rabbit's success, I suppose, at the Oscars, I kind of knew it was time for me to come home, because I wanted to contribute again back to my own community, back to my own people, and back to the stories that I wanted to tell. And I'm really glad I did, because, you know, that's when we picked up that Disney project again and made all those films. And then, well, there were a few reasons why I left LA. I had a documentary that I wanted to come home to make. Black Lives Matter was kind of, had just started. The COVID pandemic had broken out. The orange dude was in power. Heaven forbid he came back. My children were starved of their te reo Māori and their tikanga, because living over there, you can't really find it in LA. So I knew I had to come home and reignite that passion. And I started immersing myself in my own art and my own artistic kind of desires. And one of them was to start documenting the exhibition was happening down the road here at Auckland City Art Gallery called Toi Ora Contemporary Māori Art. And I started kind of collaborating with friends, and I started making little projects that helped me kind of build back my confidence. And one of them was this. Okay, I don't think it's going to work, but anyway, so I made one, and I made it on an iPhone. And then I made, sorry, the reason why I'm going to talk about that, not that you can see it, but it was actually, it was, for those of you who might have seen the exhibition Toi Ora Contemporary Māori Art, the first room you walk into is all about the creation narrative, and it's Te Kore Te Pō Te Ao Marama. And it was an opportunity, believe it or not, when this new iPhone 12 had come out, and my friend at Apple said, yeah, that thing, do you want to make something on this new phone? It works really good in low light, apparently. So I was like, yeah, great. So I shot something in the very first room that you walk into, and it kind of just was helping me kind of get back into that creative space. And then I went on to make another one, and I was collaborating with people at the time that I then since continued my creative collaboration with. And here was my other one.
Mambu walabu, nganabu, galbalabu, murungadinya.
That was made for the New South Wales Art Gallery. It was their, the new building that they had built, and based on the one that I made before, which sorry you didn't get to see, my friend at Apple had a relationship with the gallery, and the music designer that I'd used on the previous one, Marie Sheehan, I had asked her to collaborate with me on this, and she had a wonderful idea, was to collaborate with a bunch of Aboriginal artists, which was just perfect. And I love that idea of always creating your kind of creative cohort and sticking with them. So she actually was also, I used her in my, in the Toitu Toyota documentary. She became the composer and the sound designer for that film. So what have I been up to? Well, then August last year, I premiered my directorial debut feature. So backing myself and going back to the kind of first love that I ever wanted to do, which was directing. My film Toitu Visual Sovereignty played last year at the New Zealand International Film Festival. And then next week I'm heading back to LA and for the Los Angeles Asia Pacific Film Festival with this film, and then on to Rome. And it's going to screen at the Festival of the Academies. And what I'm finding now is a really interesting space to disrupt distribution, which is kind of another thing I'm all about. And I'm finding places where museums and galleries are now asking for my film, because it's finding, you know, screening spaces and audiences that are in line with my kaupapa, which is curating for community. So these places already have audiences that love art. I think the thing that we kind of struggle with as the independent filmmaking sector is that we have cinemas or exhibition spaces that really, there's no remit for them to actually screen our films. So you might want to see a New Zealand film and you've heard about it, and then next week it's gone already. Because the truth is they rely on the studio content, and they don't have to play our films. And the reason they rely on the studio content is that they're convinced that nobody wants to see our films. And it's simple as if we don't go, they won't show. It's that basic. But I'm trying to, you know, flip that on its head, and I don't think this is the only place or the only way that we need to be seen or have our films seen, because to be honest, it's just a studio system that doesn't really fit us, and it doesn't work for us anyway. One of the last things I didn't actually talk about, but it was in my opening title, was this thing about transcolonization. So according to Anthony's article from here, which I read diligently, I was like, oh my God, they're going to test me or something. I did learn a few things. One, that the prefix trans in this context means to change. Two, what a 4-ring round rule was. It's very interesting. And that the transcolonized city requires new forms of marae. Well, I suppose in my case and in my industry, we need new forms of distribution and exhibition spaces that work for us. And as I said, the current model doesn't work, and we don't participate in it. I tried that recently, and I found out the hard way. And when your values and aspirations don't align with the people that you're in business with, move on. In hindsight, really, how could they? I was the only filmmaker and creative around the board table. So, on that note, watch this space, because this iteration of Brown Brilliance is on a mission to change the way we participate in visual sovereignty, from production right through to distribution and exhibition. And this time I'm going to do it my way, the way I always had intended it to be. So, anei he mihi whakamutunga, tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Thank you for listening to me this evening. I really appreciate you being here on a cold autumn night. Thank you, my whanaunga, for having me. It's been fun.